Welcome back to Posted. When we left off, there was an assignment in ELA, I'm guessing, where they were writing a morphism, kind of a saying about a profound saying that they could write on a post-it note. That was their assignment. So Rose wrote, "A beautiful mind is worth more than a pretty face," and Dee Dee wrote, "The truth is a lie we all agreed to believe in." And yeah, I think now we know Wolf's was really good. We don't really know what it said, and he refused to share it. So let's continue and see if we can find out more. Throughout the day, notes continued to pop up everywhere, not just on lockers, but on bathroom stalls, on teachers' doors, on windows and display cases. There was one on the fire alarm that said, "In case of emergency, run," although that one didn't stay up long. There was another one on the first stall of the boys' bathroom that said, "Toxic waste site, proceed with caution." There were dozens more. There was one posted outside the computer lab warning of a nerd crossing and had a picture of a stick figure in glasses. Another outside the band room was the same. The one outside the teacher's lounge said, "Warning, zombies were spotted in the area." It didn't stay up long either. Cameron Cole was right, as much as I hated to admit it. A lot of those notes were removed almost as soon as they were posted. But not all of them. Some were clever, others were dumb. Then there was the ones from Mr. Sword's class. You could tell because the words were often filling the entire square, and most of them made you want to vomit. They said things like, "A stranger is a friend you haven't met yet," or "There's no band-aid for a broken heart." Per Mr. Sword's instructions, they were all anonymous, but sometimes you could actually tell who they were from, if not from the handwriting, then from the message. So I recognized the one attached to Jason Baker's locker instantly. I had read it once already. I even stuck around long enough to see if Jason showed up, peeled the note free, and crumpled it into a marble-sized wad. I waited until he was gone before I went and actually picked it up and read it myself. It said, "Words are ghosts that haunt us forever." I put it in my backpack, thinking the person who wrote it might want it back, that he might find a better place to put it. Getting a message through to some people was like trying to hammer a nail through a concrete block with your forehead. It would take something more than a few words penned on a sticky note to get Jason Baker's attention. In his case, the sword would probably be mightier. I forgot all about the note, though, by lunch. It stayed in my backpack. Bench skipped lunch again, saying he had to talk to Coach Mallory about something. He didn't say what it was, and I didn't ask. Instead, I sat between Dee Dee and Rose, and we played another game where we tried to see who could keep a corn chip in their mouth the longest without crunching it. I was the first one out. Rose won handily. She seemed to be in a good mood, smiling and laughing and teasing Dee Dee. But Wolf seemed distant, mouth tight at the corners, his rectangle of pizza untouched. It wasn't until just before the bell rang that I found out why. "Are you even going to show them?" he asked. Rose shrugged. "Show them what? It's not a big deal." The sudden serious look on her face was almost like a warning from Wolf to keep his mouth shut. What's the big deal?" Dee Dee asked. With a roll of her eyes, Rose reached into her pocket and pulled a post-it free, sticking it to the middle of the table for the rest of us to see. "I found this inside my math book," she said. "Somebody must have slipped it in there when I wasn't looking. I mean, it's nothing. Seriously, there are so many worse things." She stared at Wolf, who stared right back, the two of them silently continuing a conversation they had obviously started having already. Dee Dee and I looked at the note. It wasn't one of the ones from Mr. Sword's class. There was no words, there was no signature, there was no way of knowing who wrote it, but the meaning of it was clear. The war had begun. And here is what the note looked like. The catch. A long, long time ago, or so the story goes, some guy named Adam was lounging around the garden, nibbling on a fig, when the powers that be told him he should name everything he saw. So he did, and then he went around putting labels on everything. "You're a cow, you're a tree, you're an ant, you're a snake," and so on. It was the easiest way to start making sense of the world. He probably didn't know it, but he started a trend. In middle school, everybody gets a label. It's important because it makes it easier to spread gossip, easier to choose seats in the auditorium during a school-wide assembly, and to decide who belongs where. I was a nerd. Tapioca or no tapioca, we were all nerds. The whole tribe. I wrote an award-winning poem once, which I think makes me a lifetime member of the nerd club. Dee Dee was in all advanced classes and sometimes bragged about his IQ of 136, not to mention the whole Gary Gazax thing. Even Bench was all aces across the grade book. We had earned our badge in one way or another. But only one of us was a genius. Truthfully, Wolf was closer to Amadeus Mozart than I would ever be to Robert Frost. I had heard him play once. A dozen times from the hallway right outside. I'd heard him play more than a dozen times from the hallway right outside the door of his family's living room, holding my breath so he didn't know I was there, because as soon as he saw me, he always stopped playing, as if his talent was something he wanted to hide, even though everyone in the school knew how good he was. For most people, it was the only thing they knew about Wolf. Morgan Thompson, piano prodigy, but most of them had never even heard him play. He never made a mistake, at least never made one that I could hear. Maybe he just knew how to hide them or move past them so quickly that nobody noticed. Playing the piano is not like writing poetry. You can't edit it. You can't go back and erase it. If you stop and start over, people will know and they will say to themselves, well, it was good, but it wasn't perfect. Nobody even knows what the first draft of Frost's poems look like, except for maybe Robert Frost. When he showed them to the world, they were just exactly how he wanted them. Listening to Wolf play was like reading Robert Frost. I would stand outside my door, my steps muffled by the Thompsons' brown carpet, my eyes closed, dizzy with jealousy because he was still just a kid. I mean, we were all just kids, and kids are supposed to make a mistake. I'd never actually heard him perform in front of a crowd. I'd never been to any of his recitals, but I would have gone if he had asked me. We all would have gone. But he never asked. He only spoke about them after. And then only when one of us noticed the new ribbon or trophy in the mantel in the living room. They weren't stashed in the closet like my, hey, you showed up for soccer trophy. Wolf's accolades were on prominent display, visible from the foyer of their 3-story house. You could see them through the window that protruded like a blister from the front. It was a shrine. Blue ribbons, cold metal, dust. 2 or 3 times a year, Wolf would grab his sheet music and march off to conquer one competition or another, returning with another trophy to put on that shelf. Ask Wolf how he got so good, and he'll tell you what you expect to hear. Practice. And in a way, that's true, I guess. You have to want to practice that much, and Wolf actually did. But I think he did it mostly to please his parents, to give them something they had absolutely no choice but to be happy about. And I can appreciate that. I sometimes picture him up there at one of those recitals, everybody in the office in stiff, scratchy black clothes and programs folded on their laps. I sometimes wonder what it was like for him under those blinding lights, dressed in a suit with his eyes closed, body swaying, fingers dancing, audience breathless as the music is haunting. I wonder if he ever secretly wishes that I had been there to cheer him on. I feel guilty about it. Or maybe it's just regret. I'm not sure I quite know the difference yet. I've never been to a single one of Wolf's recitals, but I'd been to every single one of Bench's football games, and they were all ugly. It was the lone Friday game of the season, and this time it was under the big lights, or at least bigger than usual. The Branton High Cougars were away, so the Fighting Falcons of Branton Middle School had the high school field, which meant that the 300 or so people who usually came to watch the middle school game were scattered among the bleachers so that they could hold 2,000. Everyone could sit close to the action, only we didn't. I waited for Dee Dee and Wolf by the gates as usual, and then we paid our $2 and went to find a seat. I pointed to the empty section about 3 rows up and started that way when Wolf stopped. Not there, he said. Let's go sit at the very top this time. I looked back at the spot he turned down and noticed what I didn't see before, which was that Jason, Noah, and Cameron were clumped together on the row by them. They were all huddled over Jason's phone, laughing at something idiotic, no doubt. I obviously lingered too long because Cameron looked up and saw me and elbowed the other 2 guys. Hey, look, it's the Roman Legion, Jason said, which was hilarious, apparently, to the 3 of them. Jason proceeded to give some kind of salute like he was karate chopping the sky. Hail Caesar, he cried, and there was more laughter. Wolf gave him a gesture back, much less obvious and to the point, hand pressed close to his chest in case any of the adults were looking. What was that all about, I asked. I mean, I had seen Wolf blow Jason and company off 100 times, but I'd never seen him give them the finger before. Who cares, Wolf said, turning back around and heading the other way towards the bleachers. I followed Wolf and Dee Dee up the stairs to the very top where you could hear the flag snap. It was chilly. The kind of chilly cold you don't really notice until somebody puts a mug of warm cider in your hands and you realize how stiff your fingers are and how that first sip stings your lips. The night was clear, though, star-studded, and it felt good to be out in the sharp autumn air. The smell of hot dogs and fresh popcorn and wet leaves. I sat next to Dee Dee, who sat next to Wolf, our butts nearly freezing on that metal bench. It was the 4th game of the season, and the Falcons were 1-3 already, which was an improvement over last year's 0-11. Unfortunately, according to the roll of Dee Dee's die, we were expected to lose again. And according to everyone else you talked to, we were expected to get creamed. Do you think we'll at least score a touchdown? I asked, and Dee rolled for it. There was no chance of anybody seeing him roll all the way from the top, but he still kept that dice hidden in his palm. He rolled a 2, which meant 20% chance. Yeah, that seemed about right. I looked over at Wolf, who seemed preoccupied with the crowd, except he wasn't looking in the direction of Jason Baker's spiky head. He was looking for someone. Did she say she was coming? Who? You know who. I'm not looking for Rose necessarily, Wolf said. I'm just browsing. It was a good word. I mean, it might make a nice line of poetry. Browsing the crowd for somebody worth the price of a conversation. I knew I'd never remember that line. Let's see if the cheerleaders will screw up their somersaults, Dee said. He rolled. 70% chance of a cheerleader wipeout. At least that'd give us something to look forward to watching. Not that I wished embarrassment on anyone in particular. It's just that anybody falling on their butt was always funny. Wolf was still scanning the crowd, not necessarily for Rose. It wouldn't have surprised me to see her lumbering up the steps to join us, because in the span of 1 week, Rose Holland had not only navigated herself into our lunch table, she seemed to have stuck a harpoon into Wolf's side. Excuse me. And reeled him in. I wasn't sure what was up. Excuse me. Between the two of them, but I was glad to see that Wolf was out here with us cheering on bench. Wolf's phone buzzed, and then he laughed at something and sent a reply. Was that Rose? He nodded. Yeah, she said she's sorry she couldn't make it, but football isn't her thing. I thought back to Rose's first day, standing with Bench in the hallway, watching her part the crowd, thinking she'd make a good linebacker. Down the field, 3 kids were chasing each other around, and a referee shooed them away. I wouldn't exactly call this our thing, Dee said. The voice came on the speaker and began announcing the teams, starting with the visiting Northwestern Wildcats. We booed and told them how much they sucked. So much that they were going to put Dyson out of business, said Dee, earning him the award for the lamest trash talk of the evening. A few adults closest to us gave us sturdy looks, but we were still several rows away. A couple of weak, sputtering fireworks announced the home team's arrival. We stood and cheered as the Falcons took the field. Dee pointed. Is that him? It was hard to tell. I mean, we sat too far up to be able to pick Bench out of the crowd, so we waited for the starters to put their helmets on and huddle up. And then Bench was easy to spot once again, because he was sitting in his normal position. Number 80, sitting by himself on the bench. The opposing team looked a lot bigger than us and went across the field like a crash of rhinos. Well, at least if it's a blowout, Bench might get a chance to play, Dee said. The ref blew the whistle. The Falcons fumbled the kickoff, giving the visitor the ball at 50. Yeah, there's always that, I said. I sat and watched my hands tucked beneath my knees. It wasn't a blowout. By halftime, the score was only 17-0, which was better than I thought it would be. Dee's dice was right about the lack of a hometown touchdown. Then during the halftime show, one of the cheerleaders fumbled and landed on the grass, laughing and shaking her head. The dice always rolls true, Dee said, doing his best Gandalf imitation, although I could not remember the White Wizard ever saying that. Dee's dragon was 2 for 2 so far. I was about to ask what my mom's chances were of winning the lottery, because she did get a ticket every week. But on the kickoff, the Falcons ran it all the way back for a touchdown, proving the dice wrong. The crowd whooped and hollered, and we banged on the bleachers. Dee celebrated by buying us a bag of popcorn to split, carefully taking the stairs all the way on the end so that he didn't get too close to where Jason and company sat. Wolf set Rose updates on his phone, or maybe he wasn't texting her about the game at all. There was another touchdown at the end of the third, putting us within 3. It was going to be a close game. Still, number 80 sat on the edge waiting. And we're going to stop there. Until next time.